virtual again. It looks like we might be virtual again next month. But just to let you know, the meeting is being recorded. It does look like we have all panels here. I see George, Rod, Joy, Brian, Paul, and Damon. We do have one item on the agenda today, 4901 Battery Lane. The DAP just saw this project back in September, and we did send out a memo about a week ago outlining the comments that the DAP had at that time and things for the applicant to work on during the site plan submittal, which includes strengthening the relationship between the building at the rear of the site and the through block connections, as well as creating a holistic materials and treatment for the through block connections and further refining the base, middle, and top. And so with that, I will turn it over to the design team for their presentation.
So good morning. This is Nancy Reglin. I'm a land use attorney from Shulman Rogers representing W.C. Smith Development, the applicant. And with me today is Brian Strott, the vice president of W.C. Smith, Chris Huffer from SK&I Architects will be presenting, and Trini Rodriguez and Steve Sadler of Parker Rodriguez, who will do landscape architecture. And our team from Vica, Maryland, Shonda Beaufort, is also available if needed, if there are other questions later. Just a quick project overview, since it hasn't been so long since we were before you. The sketch plan was approved January 6th. The applicant has now filed a site plan and a preliminary plan application. The project is now 372 dwelling units with 15% MPDUs and a 12-story, 120-foot high building with a rooftop amenity space. And the project provides over 200 feet of new streetscape along Battery Lane, as long as 2 through block connections, the design of which we will present this morning. Please note that the presentation this morning includes an updated slide deck to update the site landscape design of the west courtyard. The community gardens have been relocated from the roof to the west courtyard in the final design. So we've updated the backgrounds of the building images you see today to match that filed in the site plan. However, the architecture and the building details have not changed from the DAP submission you have reviewed in advance. The project is located in the transforming Battery Lane district, where there have been 6 other buildings approved in the Brown Development Battery District sketch plan, which together with this project will transform the pattern and scale of Battery Lane as envisioned in the Bethesda downtown plan. And once all these approved projects are built, the Battery Lane District will get an expanded trail system, a median separated cycle track, and new green spaces throughout the neighborhood. We are requesting 15 public benefit points for exceptional design. The project rises to the challenge of respecting the existing heights with compatible design and massing now, but does so in an innovative way that leads seamlessly into the future of the redevelopment around it. Even though it is an inline site, it isn't designed as one, with fully articulated public-facing facades on all 4 sides that relate to the street, the 2 through block connections, and the buildings adjacent. And we will demonstrate how the design of the building and the site create a new place within the Battery Lane district. I'd like to turn the presentation over now to Chris Huffer of SK&I Architects.
Good morning, everyone. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right, great. All right, so as Nancy mentioned, I'm going to give the presentation. We're going to walk through kind of the overall site location, building architecture, going into kind of the design guidelines, and then finish with the plan. So as you all know, our building is 4901 Battery Lane, located in the middle of Battery Lane, between Battery Lane and NIH and the Bethesda Trolley Trail. Basically located in the heart of the Battery Lane district. Quickly, we'll go through some of the images of the surrounding neighborhood. As you can see, starting at the corner of Woodmont and Battery Lane, number 1, walking down Battery Lane, you see Bethesda Lane Apartments, which are directly adjacent to us on the east. Here at number 3 is Sunrise, which is the property directly to the west of us. So that's images 3 and 4. And then images 5 and 6 are the current site. So this is looking into our current site from Battery Lane. 6 is at the north side of the site, and then 7, 8, and 9 are farther down Battery Lane. So our design goals here is to achieve a dynamic and sustainable and inclusive signature address through placemaking, compatibility, connectivity, placemaking, street activation. The goal is to create a signature residential tower that is scaled, approachable, and engages and enhances the pedestrian experience and supports the transformation of the Battery Lane district. As Nancy and Grace mentioned, a few of our sketch plan DAP recommendations were to strengthen the relationship with the rear of the building and the proposed east-west through block connection along the northern common NIH property line, provide consistent pavement material and design pedestrian connections to be recognizable as the public realm and not private pathways, and further identify the style of the building with a base, middle, top design that clearly relates to one another. So starting with the building architecture, we're going to walk around the building, then we're going to discuss the pedestrian connection, and then, as I mentioned, we will discuss how we are adhering to the design guidelines, and then follow up with the plans. Here is our main facade, the south facade addressing Battery Lane. The architecture character of this building can be described as a traditional modern, utilizing traditional masonry materials in base, middle, top proportions, as well as expansive glass windows and building setbacks throughout. The building seamlessly blends the two styles together to create a uniformed building facade along Battery Lane. The base of the building is emphasized by the building setback at the 4th floor and anchored by a large 2-story glass that extends the length of Battery Lane facade. The use of traditional masonry throughout the building, but particularly at the base, helps scale down the proportion of the building to create a pedestrian-friendly proportion. So integrated within the base, we've added a series of additional design rustications with the brick and other reveals around the window to kind of break down the scale of the building. The middle here gains its proportions through the large 2-story reading in the central portion of the main facade, as well as the additional step backs at the 10th and 12th floors. This creates an architectural language and datum line that helps stretch and taper the building towards the top, as well as keeps the traditional proportions of the building. The top is created through the use of setbacks at the 10th and the 12th floors, which creates a focal point in the center, which is emphasized by the larger windows and articulated metal panels. The use of these traditional proportions, as well as using traditional masonry all around the facade, helps create a successful unified architectural facade. Moving around the building, we'll go around from the east to the west. So this is an image on the southwest corner. So this is basically if you're approaching Battery Lane from Woodmont, Wisconsin. So you can see here on the right side the beginnings of that north-south pedestrian connection, which we'll touch on in a bit. But here you can see the articulated building through our E shape on the east facade, where we've created 2 courtyards that are set back from our driveway and the pedestrian connection to add that level of articulation and setback to help provide relief for our neighbors, but also, create an adequately proportioned building that extends from north to south. This is looking directly at the east facade. So you can see, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, that our loading and garage entries are located within the site, and we are designing them to be integrated into the facade here. So right in the middle is where our loading dock and trash is located. But here you can see the setbacks of the courtyards and the additional setbacks at the 10th floor on these wings going north. Every courtyard is integrated with both hanging and recessed balconies and additional terrace space on these setbacks to help expand the units and create additional outdoor space. This is a view from the northwest corner, looking at the north facade. We've eliminated for this view all the trees adjacent to the trolley trail here, so we can get a better view of the building. As you can see, we've continued that setback on the 10th floor all the way around to the north side and continues it to the west. The north side, as well as the east and the west, are treated as, prime facades. So you can see the masonry material is extended all throughout the building, and this north elevation is integrated with recessed and project balconies, specifically to emphasize this north portion of the building, create additional eyes and activity for this east-west connector, as well as the proposed dog area on the north side. We feel that adding this additional outdoor space will be beneficial to the neighborhood, but also to our residents. This is a view of the west courtyard. So this is pretty much the I-shaped side of the building. So this is our larger courtyard facing west with sunrise here on the right, which we've hidden in view for this view to show the building. As with all the other facades, we've brought around the masonry design and proportions of the rest of the building, trying to highlight, larger, a base with larger two-story openings, emphasizing the middle proportions with the setbacks of the 10th floor and our window partitions, as well as the use of, hanging and recessed balconies. This is a view from Battery Lane on the southwest. So if we're going back towards Wisconsin and Woodmont, you can see, again, that the whole building is integrated and thoughtfully designed. With our setbacks at the top, with creating that top portion of the building, we've further articulated the building so that the penthouse and mechanical and everything is integrated into the design. So we don't have a building front with then a separate mechanical area that sticks out like a sore thumb. Here you can see that we've wrapped the building articulation of the rustication and the brick design around the base, around the corner, so it wraps seamlessly around the Battery Lane facade. And here's a little close-up on the main entrance. Here you'll see that our building setback is integrated with 2 rows of trees, which we'll cover shortly, but also you can see the additional brick rustication and brick detailing around the facade. The Battery Lane facade, as I mentioned, is anchored by the 2-story glass to help give that base its proportion, but within that is all supported by amenity space beyond, so it will help create activation and activity on Battery Lane. So here's an overall aerial of the building, so you can really see the building setbacks and the articulation as you go through the building and how it kind of seamlessly blends throughout the site and creates a unified building. As Nancy mentioned, we believe that we are achieving some exceptional design for our building, as it is a 4-sided building currently with no rear elevations. We are designing for today and for the future with our building setback at the build to line and with our massing setbacks that relate to the compatibility of our neighbors. One of the main design goals of our building is that it is really context-driven, anchored by the pedestrian connections on the north-south and the east-west, as well as its location within the heart of Battery Lane. Our goal with the massing here was to create that signature address that really becomes a compatible building through the use of masonry materials, which is similar to the rest of the neighborhood, but also utilizes the proportions of the setbacks to be compatible with our neighbors. So with that, we're going to move on to the pedestrian connection here on the north, south, and the east, west. And I'm going to hand it over to Trina Rodriguez from Parque Rodriguez to walk you through those areas.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. As Chris mentioned, in this view, you can see kind of like the streetscape. I mean, the goal of this project is to reinforce all the parameters that have been set for this part of the Battery Lane district by previous projects, creating, a seamless streetscape with the 2 rows of trees, As you can see, also the architecture has really played very well this idea of defining a very strong pedestrian scale with the architectural treatments, the way that we've been working with architects to locate the uses that are actually active and engage in the streetscape, as well as the pedestrian connection. In the view, you can see the way that we've been trying to integrate that pedestrian connection is one that feels really public. It is part of that arrival plaza, and it feels really welcoming. It has been designed with a treatment that, and an openness that makes it, not only welcoming, but also lead people into the space to sort of connect within this system of open spaces. So one of the things that these passages does, do for this area, this particular one, is that it provides a sense of porosity to the site, and with views down to the green where that is an interface with NIH. We've created along the way a series of sitting nodes that engage with the plaza. So there is a lot of eyes along the frontage and making it, safer, as well as inviting and usable. Chris, if you can see also how the pedestrian passageway sort of engages with the different uses, the courtyards, the drop off. This is a view from the front along Battery, looking into the site with the little sitting notes as you move through, trees along the way, kind of making it part of a system of this pedestrian connections. Next. So one of the comments from staff had been to enhance the way that these rear area connected with the building. So we've modified the design in this area. We have a number of connections to the building. We have the bike room. So there are connections to the bike room, there are connections to dog pet wash. There is a dog park in the area. But most importantly is we created a series of nodes on this passageway. So it's not just, a straight path with no uses or no activities. So we've created these two strong nodes, one on the right-hand side, which is at the intersection, the T intersection with this path, which in the future will go to the east and to the west. So that's a nice sort of sitting node. We're emphasizing that with a change in pavement and texture, introduce some planting around it. So there is seasonality to the treatment there. And then on the left-hand side, we have another sitting node, which actually then interfaces with the connection to the building. In addition, there is a connection that takes you up to the courtyard where we have located the community garden. So there is a connection through there back to that courtyard, which also has amenity areas. And I think you can see here the views of the, what we're intending for those spaces. So this is that major node at that T intersection with some sitting areas, some green behind it. And as I mentioned, sort of that texture and that seasonality of the plant material. And then we have a view looking as well down the path as it connects to the trolley trail and the NIH trail. So you can see that this really, between the treatment, the connections, the balconies that the architectural team and all the uses that we put here really makes it a safer and a much more engaging space. Chris, I think now, oh, okay. And this is the last view is that western node and the entrance to the building and to the dog park. And again, places for people to sit and kind of talk to neighbors. I think with this, Chris, I'll give it back to you so you can continue.
Thanks, Trini. All right, now we're going to go through some of our guidelines and how we are addressing the recommendations of the guidelines. So Battery Lane is located as a neighborhood connector. It is recommended that there is a 6 to 8 foot planting zone, a 6 to 10 foot pedestrian through zone, and then a 5 to 8 foot frontage zone in front of the building. We are adhering to all those recommendations with our 6, 7, and 12-foot zones in front of the building. We are also recommended to have a base setback, as we've discussed earlier, between 3 and 5 stories. We are located our base at starting at the 4th floor, which is about 31 feet above the grade. But we're also having additional setbacks, as I mentioned, at the 10th and 12th floors of an additional 6 to 12 feet. So depending where, or in 2 feet, sorry. So depending what level you're on, the setbacks go from 16 to 18 feet, which is within the recommendation of the setback of 15 to 20 feet. As Trini just mentioned and described, we have 2 pedestrian connections on the east-west and north-south located on our site. We are providing a minimum of 15 feet throughout, but as Trini mentioned, we have these nodes on the northeast and northwest corners that extend deeper into the site. Our goal with where it's located and its integration within the site is to, create that pedestrian connection that, doesn't feel like it is that small area to the site. It feels public, it feels integrated within the site, especially along this driveway where it feels like there's a lot of room and openness to the site with the building being set back from that connection. It's not too overbearing on the connection. Battery Lane is also a canopy corridor. So as you've seen on a few of the images, we are providing a double row of trees on Battery Lane. Now this is consistent with the sketch plan site section that was developed by the Alden sketch plan, where it was recommended to have the double row of trees and the required zones for the sidewalk, frontage, and planting zone. So we are adhering and being consistent with all those previously approved design recommendations. So this is just an extension of that. So, we can have a thoroughly compatible streetscape going along Battery Lane. For environmental design, as you see, we're providing lots of green, lots of additional trees, green roof and bioretention throughout the building, throughout the several levels of our setbacks. So throughout the rooftop and setbacks, we're providing extensive green roof, and we also have green roof and plantings in our courtyards on the lower level, as well as anchored by bioretention all around the site on the northeast and west courtyards that kind of anchor and create additional spaces throughout the site. We are meeting our 35% required green cover through use of those tree canopies and extensive green roof on the building. And for servicing, access, and parking, as we've mentioned in the sketch plan and Trini's covered a little bit, the current site as it is now has 2 curb cuts, one located on the east side and one in the central part of the site. We are consolidating those curb cuts into one curb cut at the existing location of the east curb cut here, and we are utilizing that one curb cut to bring all of our service, access, and parking items into the site. So you can see here we have that curb cut and our drive aisle bringing our loading into the middle of the site, which is helped screened by our additional planting with the pedestrian connection, but also we have our garage entrance all the way through the back of the site. As we've talked about previously, we've also created this porte cochere within that first courtyard to help bring the additional traffic for loading, drop-offs, Uber and Uber Eats, etc., off of Battery Lane, trying to encourage any short-term parking to come through this porte cochere and utilize this space to help relieve any additional traffic and pressure off of Battery Lane. We believe that these items are successfully integrated into the overall landscape of the site, but also into the building. As I mentioned, our goal was to be compatible with our neighbors in the future and our current ones as well. So one of the reasons why, where we set our setbacks, as well as creating a good proportion for the building, was to be compatible with our neighbors. So that 3-story setback is fairly compatible with the Battery Lane apartments on our east that are about 3 to 4 stories tall, and our setbacks on the 10th and 12th floors on the west side become to be more compatible with the existing Sunrise development on the west. As I've already mentioned, our building is placed roughly 25 feet off the curb, which is compatible with the recommendation of the design guidelines, but it's also compatible with the other proposed developments on Battery Lane, which are all between 25 and 30 feet, depending where you are located on Battery Lane. I believe closer to Woodmont, extending to our site, everybody's about 25 feet, and extending a little bit farther back, deeper into Battery Lane you get. Part of our, base design, as I've mentioned, is to create activity through the expansive double-story glass, which is set in front of our amenity space, trying to create that additional activation. So the entire length of facade, the goal is for there to be no back of house uses. The goal is to create an active streetscape. Also on the 4th floor where we have that setback, we will have building terraces and balconies that will further activate this area of Battery Lane. And, the goal is to utilize our, the materiality of the masonry and the rustication and our brick design details to, create that additional scale that's pedestrian friendly and activate this portion of our facade. Along with those items, we've created a series of step backs within that base to help create a little bit more base variation and articulation. So it's not just one flat facade. So I think with that and the series of additional sized openings with the double height, but they're larger and smaller openings throughout, gives that base that additional variation that will help make this a friendly environment. Our building, although we don't have multiple towers in the site, we wanted to address the tower separation distance from our building and from our neighbors. We anticipate that at some point in the future, probably one of these sites would be redeveloped. So one of our goals was to create the proper separation for the current condition, but also for the future condition. So instead of locating our building, squarely on one side of the site, we are located pretty much in the middle of the site, which helps create additional separation between our tightest points here on Battery Lane, but also because of our use of courtyards throughout the middle of the building, it creates these areas for extended separation and breathability throughout the site. As we've talked about through our proportions of our base middle top, we've created our tower setbacks with our step backs of the 3rd floor, 10th floor, 12th floor to help kind of create this step back all the way to the top to create our base and base middle top reading. Within these setbacks, we've integrated space for terraces and green roof as well. So our goal here with creating a tower top was, 1, it would help our proportions for the building, but 2, it integrates our penthouse amenity space, but also helps integrate our penthouse mechanical space as well. The goal here was to use that tapering from Battery Lane, but also additional tapering on the sides of the building, which you've seen on those setbacks on the 10th and 12th floors, to create a pinch point and taper towards the middle here to create a greater emphasis towards the middle of the building. Creating that additional proportion of the top, we've created larger amenity windows, which are extended with a further articulated metal panel design at the top here. The goal was to create a unified building that harmonizes with the whole design and also incorporates, like I said, the mechanical and roof enclosures as well. We believe through our design, we are creating a bird-friendly design. As you can see, we don't have very many large expanses of glass. We're utilizing kind of the traditional method of a lot of smaller punched openings throughout the building, which help create larger areas of opaque wall surface. We're varying the materials through the use of the material of the windows, the metal panel, and the brick to change the apparent sizes of these openings. So as I mentioned, we have the smaller punched openings, but we are expressing our proportions through double height and multi-story readings throughout the window design. We are incorporating recessed balconies and projecting balconies to help create additional depth to the building through shadow lines. And we have a integration of varied landscaping and architecture on the ground levels that will also help create some dynamic shadows and architectural elements in glass covering. So I'm just going to walk you quickly through the plans. As Nancy mentioned, we have 2 levels of underground garage, which are serviced by our driveway on the west side that extends and has the building and garage entrance at the back of the site. Within our garage, we have access points to the north area, north dog park and trail area here, which have easy access to a dog wash and our bike room at the north. Here is just the first floor, which we've seen. As Trini mentioned, we have, useful amenity spaces on the ground floor, which surround these courtyards. The goal here is we have some additional, oh man, completely forgetting the word. Just planting areas in the courtyard. Sorry, I'll move on. But here you can really see the driveway, the porte cochere, and everything integrated around the lobby space on the ground floor, and that separation created by the pedestrian connection in the driveway and creating that extra space and pedestrian friendliness going around the site. Going up, you can see here, as I mentioned, we have that double height amenity space around Battery Lane on the second floor. And then you can also see all the spaces for our recessed and projecting balconies on these floor plans. So the majority of your units have some sort of access to private outdoor space, and all of them obviously have access to public outdoor space within the building, courtyards and rooftop terraces. So you can see here, we're starting to set back on Battery Lane and on the east and west and north facades here on the north. So integrated within those terraces, we anticipate creating green buffers between the units as well. So additional green space and planting all throughout the building. Moving up, there's further setbacks on the Battery Lane and the north facades, and moving up to the rooftop where we'll have additional green roof, rooftop amenity, and a pool deck with our mechanical uses up at the top. And that would be the end of our presentation. As Nancy said, our entire team is here and available for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Chris, I just wanted to jump in real quick and say that the pedestrian connection on the east side of the site seems to be a great improvement over where we were last time.
So Brian, this is Nancy Regland. So yes, we did shift the pedestrian connection, the through block on the east side over to the property line so that there would be the street trees along that path down the length of the driveway. So we did take your suggestion and we shifted it to the right.
I think it comes off as much more legible as public space. Before, when it was hugging the driveway, I think it was a little ambiguous. And now I think it's clearer. I think the distinction pavement as well makes it more welcoming to somebody of the general public to step off the sidewalk and move to the north towards the trail.
Yeah, we agree,
I think
Brian.
we agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the city notes along it really help to kind of make it more active as well.
I also think there's a lot of improvement on the site plan by really, shifting the pathway to the public realm. It's really delineate the space much better. I also really appreciate that how you created 2 nodes and creating some seating area. So the dog run is, I think it's a great idea. I don't know if you guys thought about the noise and the maintenance in the future and whether, this can be handled. This is so close to the public sidewalk on the back.
We did put a buffer between the public walk and the dog park. Actually, it's interesting. I mean, I know I let Brian speak because they run a lot of this, and it's an incredible amenity for residents. I mean, they actually really like to have it. And what happens usually is that people that actually like dogs are the ones that tend to rent apartments that are near there. They just love, I mean, it's a great social interaction. Your neighbors, even your neighbors coming by. So it's a great activity, just because nowadays so many people have dogs that becomes really a true social mixer. It's not just for dogs, it's also for people.
And one of the advantages of the dog park location is that it's because of the grading of the site goes down as you go north on the site towards the trolley trail, and so that area of the dog park actually is in front of the lower level of the garage, which is why we can have that connection into the garage. So it's that dog park won't be adjacent to any units. It'll be about a floor below those units. So we think that'll also help with the noise.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, from our past property management experience, we certainly recognize the importance of getting the dogs as quickly out of the building into the dog area as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. So we like the connections interior of the building that lead you out to this northern area. And, we are very familiar from a maintenance perspective about the cleanliness and visibility and lighting as well in the evening hours, recognizing that this dog walk exercise area gets a lot of usage from residents throughout the entire day and into the evening, and as well as the early morning hours as well. So we're taking all that into consideration with this design.
So I had to smile when I saw the dog park. I don't remember seeing it in the earlier submission. It may have been there, but living in the town of Chevy Chase, they have tried for years to get a dog park in our town, and they're real proponents of it, but there's also people that are adamantly opposed to it. So I did smile. I don't really have a comment on the dog park itself. I think this project, is really very good. I think it's done some nice improvements to it. I think it'll be a project like the great apartment buildings that line Connecticut Avenue that will always feel fresh and relevant. So I really have no critical comments other than to kind of, support the design and the effort that really has gone into doing what I think is a really elegant building. My only one little comment would be the dark material you have around the loading docks. Is it really emphasizing the kind of the nature of those? And maybe you want to try and find some other material or other color to kind of suppress them than rather call them out. But that's a relatively minor comment. But I also want to add that, thank you for the very thorough presentation, very responsive presentation.
I'm going to piggyback on what Rod said. I think there's a kind of inevitability to the design. When we looked at this last time, it was a massing with a number of referential photographs that spoke to precedents, things that were influencing Chris and his team. The one thing that along the lines of recommendation, I think it's a very elegant building. As Rod said, I think it's going to be a timeless piece. It'll age well. It'll be something that will be relevant well into the future. I like the image we're looking at right now. I like the way in which the building creates a base for itself. And that's done by relief, and it's done by the kind of coining that or rustication, potato, doesn't matter what you call it at the end of the day, that sort of texture that takes place there. And I know that it wraps to the west side for a bit. And then as I look at that west elevation, and as I look at the north and the east elevation, the spandrel that carries across that creates a sense of that that grounding seems to disappear. I can understand why you would suppress the rustication for a variety of reasons, but the northern portion of the west elevation, the northern portion of the east elevation, lose that same sense of gracefulness when it meets the ground that you guys have achieved so beautifully on the south edge. I know you don't have the option of relief, but on those levels, it could be simply a coping. It could be simply a coping with a spandrel articulation to sort of differentiate the base from the shaft. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about with regard to that. I mean, all elevations should ground gracefully, and I think you've proven you guys, you already know how to do it. So I don't know what's holding it back on the other sides, but it might be some unseen economic thing. But it just strikes me as that could be just a simple articulation.
Yeah, I think, Rod, we could probably look at adding, like you said, maybe an additional change of a spandrel or a belt course or something around there. I think, we wanted to really give some, although we said it is a four-sided design, right? There's no rear. We still wanted to give a little bit more of attention to that battery lane facade with that additional recessed rustication coining at the base to give that just, that little bit more special feature. But I do hear you with that, creating that datum line really around the rest of the building to help ground it.
Chris, I'm not advocating putting the coining on the other surfaces. I think that's one of the ways that you're telegraphing frontality. I'm also not advocating a setback because obviously that screws up the whole design. But I think that's just within the articulation of surface. I think of people like Giulio Romano and the Palazzo Macarani in Rome, which you're probably familiar with. Does an enormous amount of articulation within just a very shallow dimension, and sometimes just changing material. As Rod had mentioned, the glaring dark abyss of the loading dock, it really calls that out as a kind of void. Maybe that might be something to think about as well. But anyhow, great job.
I do have a question regarding the grading change of the site. I saw quite a bit of retaining wall at the base of the building. Have you guys considered some treatment, planting to break up the retaining wall, or using some kind of materials or textures to make it look not so blank? Right now it looks like, I'm looking at the west elevation right now. I don't know how tall the retaining wall is. It's on page 18, I believe.
Chris, I believe we have a little bit of space between that and the property line, or are we at the property line? So it'd probably be some architectural texture treatments.
Are we talking about right here?
Yes.
Yes. So we are, I mean, the goal is to kind of integrate it as much as we can with the courtyard. I think, this was our best modeling response really with the grading at Sunrise. It's pretty close. So I think there's some areas that are maybe a little bit more exposed than they will be in the final condition. We are right on the property line in this location. So this is kind of part of the garage that you see. I think, the goal is to use a different material from the masonry, a painted CMU or something to kind of differentiate it a little bit. But I think we're also, we've looked at adding certain articulations to it, maybe a little bit of relief, similar to what Rod was talking about for the base. And, I think maybe that's something we could certainly look at. But, I think on this area, the screen area, this isn't really our property, so we can't screen it with any additional landscape or anything right there. So it's really, this between us, this part and the building is really just Sunrise's driveway to their parking lot in the back here. So it's not really a public area as well.
Yeah, I have.
But I would also,
go ahead.
I would just mention, this image, we took all the trees that are in the tree save area around the parking lot on the left of this image on a Sunrise. So there are actually trees here at this rear end of the property around their parking lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That will help.
This is Damon. No critical comments from me. I think I'm very pleased with the direction of this project. I think Chris, Trini, Nancy, I really appreciated the thorough presentation here, and it looks like a very nice project to me. So no critical comments.
Thank you.
I think it's turned out, this is Paul, I think it's turned out very well. I'm very pleased with the adjustments that were made from our comments previous. The massing was always something I think that I think we were pretty happy with. And now with the detail and some adjustments, slight adjustments to the site plan and the landscape, I think this is coming out very, very well. So congratulations. I also see, on that side view, you can see very well the what Brian was talking about with the articulation, a little bit more of the base, just, something very simple, but I think it's very nice project.
I think my mic was off, but I concur with the comments that have been made. Particularly pleased with the landscape improvements, the nodes, which is a thing that I really believe in on linear trails. So I think the project has come along very nicely, as expected.
Thank you.
Okay, if we have no further comments from the panel themselves, we do have one member of the public here, and I just want to give them a chance to speak and make any comments.
Hi, this is Michael Fechko. I'm a property owner, longtime resident of Battery Lane, and someone who walks everywhere. First, I'd like to give kudos to the design of the building. I really appreciate what you've done on the east and west sides, especially getting cars off of Battery Lane when they come to do drop-offs and pickups. The east side is really nice. I appreciate that. I've two big concerns. One is when you're the amount of time and effort spent on opening the space behind the building for, at this moment, a very aspirational path versus the much more narrow space in the front of the building for the sidewalk, which will be immediately impacted. The building is built. I understand that you're working with a limited space, but in the front, you provide pedestrians only 12 feet of space between the sidewalk and the front of the building. And if I understand correctly, the front of the building will be management office, potentially a gym, the lobby. I don't really get how that activates or enhances my pedestrian experience on the sidewalk on something that is used every single day versus the rear of the building where there appears to be, if I read the numbers correctly, about 40 feet of space between the back of the building and the potential path, the east-west path. I would love to see more space in the front of the building. As I'm walking down, going to Harris Teeter or Starbucks or to the Metro, more space for me, other people, strollers, dogs, and potentially bicyclists, because they're not all going to use the bike path, would be really beneficial to those of us who live and use the sidewalk. And again, that's something that's going to be immediately impacted. Someone from the planning staff could correct me, but I don't think that there's an actual plan for the east-west path behind the buildings from end to end at this point. And it's great that you're planning ahead for that, but with 40 feet behind and 12 feet in front, it would be great if the whole building could go back maybe 10 feet. Give the people who are using the sidewalk more space to enjoy that space, more trees, more grass, more squirrels, more butterflies, all that stuff. And then one thing that goes along with that is, I've asked this question multiple times. What is the plan for undergrounding utilities on Battery Lane? Because if you're going to spend the time and effort and money to create what you're showing right now, it's beautiful. It's going to be wasted if it's separated by multiple utility poles, their guy wires, and then wires overhead that will prevent trees like the one you're showing right now from growing naturally. PEPCO will come by and take care of that. So, so those are my two questions. One is underground utility, and the other is, can you create more space up front for the people who are using the sidewalk that currently exists and will be impacted every day? Thank you very much.
Grace, do you want to answer some of that as far as what is in the plan? I think that northern pathway is being promoted and planned for all the buildings that are going to be going along that northern edge of Battery Lane. So that is part of the plan.
Yeah, that's correct. It is the sector plan through block connection, which will ultimately provide the east-west connection to the Bethesda trolley trail to Woodmont through the rear. It is something that is going to happen through the redevelopment of these sites. So it is going to be a site-by-site thing. And like this site is the first one coming forward for site plan on the northern side. So of course they are going to provide it. And then additionally, in terms of the undergrounding utilities, the sketch plan was conditioned to underground the utilities. And so that will be happening as part of the review process. And again, conditioned at site plan. And then just in terms of the streetscape, this is something that has been envisioned for this portion of Bethesda, along with much of the other portion of the downtown. It is to have the pedestrian with the minimum width zone. As you can see, that's what they're providing here. I can understand where the comment is coming from, but this is the vision that is being created with the sector plan. It's the activated pedestrian realm with the buildings being closer to the street.
And it's a wider, I think it's a wider sidewalk that's
It is
that
wider than
fronts.
what is in the current condition today, yes. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Perhaps the applicant does, and if they want to add on to anything else.
So to put it in lay people's terms, the architect and the landscape architects are paying are observing the build to line, which is basically they are required to put a certain percentage of their facade at the location we see it. They would be in violation if they were to push it further to the north. But in accommodation of the gentleman's comments, I'm wondering if he hasn't hit on something that maybe, again, might be something to look at, is just simply this entry piece. That the entry piece projects a canopy out to create a sense of welcome and enclosure as one enters the building. Could the entry piece be slightly recessed and at the same time project the canopy out, giving a little bit more gracious, a node on that sidewalk where people waiting to be admitted to the building might have a place to not be cheek by jowl with people that are moving by. So there might be some middle ground in order to accommodate the intent of the plan, which is building at this, placing the front facade, the south facade of the building at this line. They are compliant, but maybe that entry piece could gravitate slightly back, just the part that we see in gray could be slightly recessed, creating a kind of alcove for arrival and so forth. Maybe the apparatus to buzz yourself in and all that kind of stuff. So there may be a middle ground that accommodate both the observation, but also at the same time be compliant with the requirement to place the facade at this location.
So this is Nancy Reglen. So the downtown plan did recommend setbacks and build two lines for Battery Lane, and it was a range. And in fact, what happened was Stonehall, which is at Woodmont at Battery Lane, has a 15-foot from back of curb to the face of their building. And then the next buildings that were in the Battery District, the Brown Development, they were at 20 feet. And then their project directly across the street from this was at 25 feet. And then as you go deeper into Battery Lane, where it really becomes more residential, like across from Whitehall, where Mr. Fetchko lives, that building in the Battery District Brown Developments project is set back 30 feet. So there's a transition as you move away from the more commercial section along Woodmont Avenue. As you go deeper into Battery Lane, it does open up And that's, you know, we're following that same transition by going to 25 feet here, setback from the curb.
This is George Dove. I very much agree with what Brian had mentioned about the entry. I've been very quiet about the base, but I do feel that the base as exhibited is somewhat too similar all the way around. And I think the idea of a break at the lobby and maybe moving it back into the lobby 5-6 feet, something like that, all the way up might be a very positive step. I'm not suggesting we require it, but I think the points have been made that would reinforce a little more oomph on the lobby itself. And recessing it makes the most sense.
And I'm recalling weekend before last, I was walking around in Chicago on the Gold Coast, and on Burton Place, there's that great house called the Madlener House. It's a prairie-style house done by Schmidt Garden. And one of the great things about it is it creates this little alcove right off the street that is adjacent to the entryway, and it creates this very welcoming effect. And it might be just a thought about how this could be tweaked to so that you're not cheek by jowl with people that are waiting to be admitted to the building as you walk by, and that might define that, give a little bit more purpose to this. The kind of architecture here is about discrete space making, and I think you could create a kind of node that would be a discrete space that would be very welcoming, and deal with that gray area that has the canopy that would be canopy projecting plus that piece of glazing maybe moving back some increment. I don't want to be prescriptive as to how much, but some increment to kind of create a little sense of enclosure. And I think the landscape architecture of that piece could be very helpful. Anyhow, I'll be quiet.
I'll just add one more thing. I mean, if you did recess the lobby entrance, the canopy itself might be able to be smaller or push back a little bit. So just a little bit heavy, in my opinion, hanging as it is. But I know the designers are very capable of resolving this to what would be a somewhat better solution.
I'd like to say thanks to everyone for all your responses to my comments and questions. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that as all this redevelopment goes forward, that everyone keeps in mind the people that are actually using the Battery Lane District, people who own property here and live here. Keep all of us in mind as you design and develop for what's going to be, our neighborhood for the future. And again, thank you.
Okay, so we have just 1 minute left, and so I don't mean to rush everyone, but I just want to get a feel from the panel. Are we ready to vote today on the design excellence points? I'm seeing some nods. Okay, and so the applicant is requesting 15 points for design excellence. Do I hear the applicant or the DAP is comfortable with that, or are there conditions specifically for this recessed entry that the DAP is looking at, or how do we feel?
I'm ready for 15 personally.
I think this project is easily worth 15 points, so I support that. I think we should give it up to the applicant to consider studying moving the glass back on the entrance. I think that's a good suggestion. I think it's a minor tweak, to be honest with you, but generally I'm very supportive of this project.
I agree.
I agree.
Same here.
Agree.
Or here unanimous for the 15 points with the recess as a suggestion, not a condition. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. And we will be emailing you soon if we have a March meeting. I believe it will be virtual, but we hope to be in person in April. So look forward to seeing you all in person. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.